and what would privacy professionals' role look like? I think that's what we should dwell upon. My session is not going to educate you more on data privacy or talk about the law, DP law, or talk about any particular area, privacy technologies in depth. The idea is, I think nobody can claim they're fully knowledgeable in this very vast and expansive domain of privacy, which is so fast changing. None of us can be called expert, but it's about that some of us are more experienced than others. I think the more intent is to share the experiences and give food for thought, sometimes even provoke you to think and go back and figure out what is missing, what more to be done, and so that's the intent. So I think don't take it as a knowledge session. And before we get into the changing perspectives, etc., I would like to spend about 10-15 minutes onto understanding of privacy itself. Because I figured out over the last couple of years through my interactions that the understanding of privacy itself is not complete because of various reasons. One of them being that none of us are educated in privacy. None of us have gone through proper college education. There is none, in fact. Cybersecurity at least has, but privacy we still need to have a proper curriculum. And so most of us who learned this is because due to our own learning process through certifications, reading books, homegrown, unlike college educated, formal educated professionals. So I think it's important for us to take a few minutes to understand that, get calibrated, and then next part of the interactions will be more fruitful. So there are several. We will not get into defining privacy, etc. It's far from adequate to think of such an attempt because there are several definitions, and it is more important to dwell on the concept of privacy and how it is evolving rather than getting into a theoretical definition. Now, there are several eminent experts in the last decades who proposed their thoughts on theories on what is privacy, how it can be classified, what would be the right way to interpret harms. All that, the intention was to be able to safeguard privacy. So when you want to safeguard something, you need to understand what it means, and then decide what measures needs to be done before, and then you figure out what are the harms. And there are many experts, of course, but I think we should somewhere choose some school of thought to proceed, and I have chosen Dr. Ellen Weston's theory. He's written a book called Privacy and Freedom. This book is available. I'm not sure whether it's available in India, but he's a very eminent academician and used to be professor. He passed away a few years ago from US University, used to be the expert. And he proposed this states of privacy, 4 states of privacy, which are very important whether you are in the physical world or digital world. So what is these states of privacy and how they are translating to the functions of privacy? We'll just spend a few minutes on this. So there are 4 distinct states which Professor Ellen Weston suggests, which are intimacy, solitude, reserved, and anonymity. The sequence is not so important, particularly reserved and anonymity, whether they are 3rd or 4th is a debate, but we'll get to that. So intimacy is something we all know. I'm sorry, first we'll cover solitude. So solitude is the first state, which is about being to oneself, being alone. So we traditionally understand solitude by saying that we want to be left alone in a room, physical space, not to be disturbed, so that we can think, introspect what's going right, what's going wrong. And that solitude state of privacy is extremely important in a particular day for every one of us when we want to take a recap of what we learned and introspect what applies to me, what new things I need to learn, where I do need to correct, etc. Intimacy is a state where you have a conversation with somebody who's very close to you. Could be a spouse, could be a child, could be a close friend of yours, could be a dad, with whom you want to have interactions which are very intimate, private conversations, and you like to spend that kind of moments. We all do that in some part of the day with in our daily life. And this is also very important. And this need not be at home. It could be a private conversation in a coffee shop with your friend. So this is, of course, both solitude and intimacy. We expect nobody else is listening to my conversations. The solitude, of course, doesn't have any conversations, but we don't expect people to snoop around what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, what I'm reading, etc. In intimacy, the conversations are quite private, obviously. Reserved is a state when you are in a group of people who know you, often who recognize you, but you decide for temporarily to stay calm and not participate in that group. So this is something like your digital analogy would be like you're in a WhatsApp chat group in your, let's say, your college alumni network, etc., where we have 100 students and 100 friends with whom you interact. But there are times when for a week you don't even respond, but you see everything possibly at your right time. So you've chosen a state of reserve for some time due to various reasons, and it's expected that your other friends and colleagues respect that state of privacy. Uh, Anonymity is a very different kind of privacy, which you enjoy by being amidst crowd, in the public crowd. So here, the people among whom you are present do not possibly recognize you. In fact, they should not recognize you. Then only it becomes anonymity. Otherwise, it may get into intimacy or reserve. So anonymity is a very, very important right where we all want at times to be in middle of the crowd, to examine, to observe, to understand what's going on in the world, to enjoy maybe a coffee in a place where nobody else is there. You normally don't do that in your hometown or in a place where you regularly go for shopping. In a different place you go and you want that state. You probably you're not lonely, but you're in middle of the crowd, but you're not surrounded by thoughts. You're not surrounded by people's ideas coming on you, etc. You are free to choose what you want, when to speak to anybody or not speak to. You may have a conversation or a coffee table with a stranger, and for a brief moment, that's fine. But still, at large, you are alone in a crowd, and this is a very important right. These all states of privacy are important, equally important, in fact, and these are not to be thought as they are suitable for different kinds of people. It's not that there are certain kind of people who like to be in solitude, some are like to be reserved. It's not like that. All of us, regardless of what economic strata we come from or what religious backgrounds, we all want a normal life, all kinds of these states in a day, on almost every day. So we would require this. So it is, there are times when we want to be social, there are times we want to be alone. And these states, one should be able to switch. And that's why we call privacy as contextual integrity, which is, it depends on context. Right, so privacy cannot be defined with a fixed state. The same information which is personal sometimes becomes sensitive, how you process, etc. So there are four um, functions of individual privacy, which again Dr. Ellen Westin proposes. These kind of are useful to analyze based on the states of privacy: personal autonomy, emotional release, self-evaluation, limited and protected communication. So these functions are very closely knit with the states, and they give this this idea of you being the sole decision maker of when you like to share what information about you to whom. So the central focus area is that the you are the one individual empowered to disclose information about you, and it's not the other way where people can take information about you. What is this information? We'll see in the next slide. So personal autonomy is kind of very, very important. It gives you, it's like individuality in other words. So all of us, we need to be an individual. When we say individual, it is not the commonly word used individual. It is about having my own thoughts, having my own convictions, having my own ideas of what is right and wrong, the learning that we get over a period of time, which helps us to form our own convictions on what is right and wrong, what I need to do, etc. That individuality can come only if you follow all these states of privacy. If you're constantly surrounded by people, you will not have time to get into solitude, and your personal autonomy is compromised because you are then a product of of people around you. And if they happen to be great, everything will be good for you. If they are not, then you are in trouble. So it is very difficult to say that we cannot choose an environment where always we are surrounded by people who are like-minded or right. It's impossible to do that. We all want to be surrounded in the society with different kinds of people. Somebody will teach you how to dance. Somebody will teach you how to do maths. Somebody will say that what you need to do for playing basketball, etc. So it's important to have holistic experience, and that you cannot get unless you are having that switching of states. Emotional release is when you want to experience that the break from crowd, the what you got, a lot of things you learned, you got frustrations, you were at work, you like certain things, but you didn't like certain things. You come back, you want to vent off the feelings. So that can come only if you have emotional release, and that can happen when you are alone, left alone for some time. Self-evaluation is you yourself evaluate what is important for you, what you need to become, what's your identity, what information you need to share. So all that, what is the right time for you to disclose to the world that you are planning to take an exam. Let's say you're preparing for a very important exam, you're switching up, having a plan to switch career, you want to get into a completely new hobby. We simply don't go and disclose to people. There is a time, right time we feel that we need to disclose to the world. Before that, there are times when we think, we introspect, we evaluate, we pilot, we maybe try a couple of sports alone, maybe alone or maybe in an intimate company of our siblings. All that is very important for you to enjoy, because if you're deprived of that, it's an unfair world. We all need similar platform. So if anybody deprives you of this platform of privacy, which it means that there is a asymmetry between your growth and learning and somebody else's learning and growth. So that's what is the key thing in this. And in democratic societies, this is extremely important for individuals to grow into their own being. And we like all individuals to be different. We want a commonality, of course, but we want society progresses when each individual is different. Different doesn't mean that you become destructive or you do unlawful activities. Being different means the diversity that the world brings in humanity is very, very important in a democratic society. And that can happen only when you switch between all these states of privacy. The limited and protected communication is about what information you like to share, with whom. The information that you share with friends is not something that you share with your spouse and maybe with a child, right? So these different contexts must be respected for people, and this should not be thought at any stage as people hiding something and doing some nefarious activities. Often people have this belief that if somebody wants privacy, then probably they're hiding something, and that means that they probably are doing something nefarious, and therefore we should not want privacy. So that's a negative connotation about people have about privacy, and it's very, very important to remove those misconceptions. So what happens now in this entire state of privacy when we talk of this, probably you would have thought about the examples. All I gave was physical mostly and less of digital. In the digital world, we should continue to have these uh, uh, basic states of privacy, and there is no way we can compromise. And that's what I'm trying to show in the next slide, where we talk about interested parties. So when we say privacy, who is our adversary or who are interested in our data, and why do they need it, and why is it that we get pained when our data is shared with some other company, right? So that's what we focus here in this slide. Now these entities which are surrounding in the central portion, I've shown an individual. And these entities are just illustrative. There could be many more entities we can put here. These are examples. There are employers, there are social media companies, there are retailers where you go and buy goods and services, maybe through e-commerce or maybe by visiting a store. There are apps which you download which will collect lots of information from you, some which are necessary and some which are excessive and unnecessary. There are insurance companies, right? State is a large domain of public utilities, law enforcement agencies like police and many other income tax, right? So many interactions we have with the governments. They have a duty and obligation to provide the facilities, utilities to citizens, and as part of the engagement, obviously we need to share data with them. So in this process, how do we balance the interest of those stakeholders and us? So in general, the understanding is that uh, uh, in the physical world, the privacy rights that we had should not get compromised when we go to digital world. In traditionally, when we used to go to a shop to buy, let's take example of retailer. So we go to a shop and we buy the goods and come out. The shopkeeper, if you go to a familiar store, maybe pop and mom store next in your neighborhood, probably they know you well, and they would build such a loyalty between you and him. The loyalty exists that they may offer you discounts and things like that happen over a period of time, and that exists in every part of the world. But larger stores, when you go, you buy products over the e-commerce. The expectation is that there's a fair deal. The price that you pay will be similar whether I go or you go, right? Regardless of our economic status. But at times, many times, because of the power of data, the market or the retailer would like to have disproportionate understanding of your profile, what you bought, what's your habits, etc., preferences, and sometimes offers you discounts. Sometimes it could be they could exploit you. Now that depends on several other aspects, like the applicable regulations, data ethics, and many other factors. But it's given a choice, we all would like to have a fair deal. So we would not like anybody to ask you right information which helps them to make more money. For instance, I was giving an example the other day when I was in a wanting to get my wall in my one of my rooms repainted. I was calling that service company for asking, would you be able to come and what would be your the applicable rate? And instead of telling me the rate of that room painting charge, they first asked me, where do you live? Now that kind of question is going to help him or her to decide the price based on what my ability to pay is. Now, would you like a retailer to understand customers' profile and therefore do a differential pricing? Now there are no laws around this. I think it will take time, and law and technology will always be different at different pace. So it's important for us to exercise our rights to have the freedom to see that our data is not available for people to make such unfair deals. So you would like to in the physical world, you probably can know how to present yourself. In the digital world, because of the ability to glean data from your digital footprints, there are possibilities for many companies, retailers, etc., social media companies, for them to know your profile, and there could be use cases which are exploitative. There are lots of beneficial use cases. On the other hand, for instance, a bookstore can offer you the kind of books which have arrived, which may be of interest to you, and plethora of use cases. Then, when you take loyalty cards membership, you can get discounts. They can suggest what packages have come up, but there can be exploitative use cases. So it's important for us to safeguard ourselves from getting exploited. Now, for that reason, the law recognizes this and calls that empowerment has to be to individual. So people are the center of it, the center of the privacy. You are the king. It is your data, and you are the ones who should be empowered to decide when to share what information about it. So what's the information we're talking about here? Three things. You, when we say you, your identity, your name, maybe your identity, your photograph, your maybe Aadhaar card, your driver's license number, etc. 3, 4 things are there which will describe you uniquely. Anything that describes you uniquely. Next is your profile. Your profile is about your demographics, your height, your religion, where you come from, what's your kind of economic strata, what can describe you, which will help me as a retailer to exploit you or to understand what kind of consumer you are. And your digital footprints are the ones which you generate every day when you transact in the cyberspace, through an app, through a mobile app, through a web space. Your wearables, you log into a e-commerce portal, you buy tickets through your e-banking portal. So regardless of what you do today, most of the activity that we do are generating digital footprints, and these digital footprints often are able to uniquely identify you because of the other necessities of identifying you, your maybe unique, your eligibility to get to identify yourself uniquely, so that you are the same passenger who's boarding the plane. Or if you are buying liquor, then we need to know that you are above 18, or if you're not a child, all that stuff. So there are requirements due to which the identity information needs to be collected, and that itself gives these companies the ability to uniquely identify you across platforms, across your food habits, your driving habits, what you do on the social media, where did you go to Sunday, right? Which holiday destination you're choosing, what kind of friends you have, what kind of hobbies you have, what games you play. So the ability is ever increasing, and because of which we often get into the disadvantage space, and the control needs to be taken back. So the key theme should be that we need to own the data, and we should decide when the data needs to be taken. And in fact, there are two important principles. I'm not covering here GDPR or India DPDP law or any law, but two, three important principles that apply in this context is unlinkability, data minimization. Data minimization is about not collecting data or collecting minimal and proportionate data. Now, this has to be applied in the context by privacy professionals. It's not just about only collecting, it's also about processing, sharing, disclosing, using. At every stage, the default position should be how I can share minimal information to you, so that your understanding is minimal, and I just get for the benefit of the transaction, I need to give information. But the other side wants more information from you. And so this is a game which will continue forever, that companies would like more information from you, and you would like to give minimal information. And this game is more of a trade-off between your privacy and how much freebies and discounts and benefits you like to have. It's just an individual choice. Again, going back to the previous slide, I think each of us have our own way of upbringing, culture, preferences. So nobody will tell you that how much privacy each of us should need. We all switch between those contexts, but some of us are more social, more forthwith in the web, social media, etc. Some of us are reserved. So I think that's a individual trait, and to a certain extent also a reflection of the culture, the society. But largely, the digital society must have safeguards in place to prevent misuse of data. Another example I can give you is some apps, for instance, can collect, there's an attribute called remaining battery power. If they capture the cab aggregator app, it captures that and figures out your desperation status when your remaining battery power is 2%, and they charge you higher price when you are about to book a cab. So what do you call that? It's a pricing based on your desperation status. So will you allow companies to understand your status of desperation? Now, will the company which is collecting that information disclose to you that they are capturing this data? What is the legal basis? Why are they capturing? What use they will subject to? All these are requirements of the privacy regulations. Insurance companies can install a gadget which will help you to suggest when to figure out the maintenance, periodic maintenance, or wear of the tire. And the same telematics can be used for increasing your insurance premium by figuring out what times of the day you drive, what speeds, what accelerations. Even if those speeds are within the speed limit, you can be considered to be profiled into a category called dangerous driver, although you're not violated a law. But that itself gives me, as an insurance company, to the tendency to put you into a different bucket of high risk category, and therefore charge you higher premium. Now, is that fair? When an insurance company is not supposed to analyze the data, we all want to not to be surveilled. We don't want to be constantly subjected to scrutiny of what I'm doing at every moment, as long as I'm doing legal things. So that's the conflict between today's individuals who are participating in digital society and the businesses which want to exploit. Having said that, A lot of good use cases are there, huge benefit you get. There's no second question about that, but we all need to tread cautiously, make sure that the laws make them accountable, and we need to play our role to safeguard ourselves and our privacy. So this is an example of the current state of information disclosure that's happening, which is a kind of reflection from previous slide of what happens if your information is shared. If you look at, I'll probably share. I'm assuming many of you would be familiar with what is called Johari window. It's a very old concept used to understand psychological aspects of you, to see that what kind of personality you are. Are you extrovert? Are you introvert? How much of it people know you, right, and all that stuff. So you can learn more about it. I'm sure it's widely available about Johari window and how it is used. But the emphasis here is to say that the quadrants where knowledge about you is known to the world more is increasing. So that quadrant, and the next quadrant I will also show you so that you get a full picture of it. So this is where we are moving towards. The ideal state is what is known to me should be more, obviously, and what is unknown to others, what is known to others should be less. So you can see that, and that particular area on the top left quadrant is increasing like anything, because of digital footprints, because of the increasing ability of computing technologies to the processing speed to get data and draw rich profiles about each of us, which are used for advertisements, which are used for various use cases. The problem is not when they're used for, as long as they are for recommendation engines or suggest to you. The problem gets in when it impacts our decisional autonomy. So decisional autonomy is about impacting my having a subliminal influence on my ability to take decisions. So when we are bombarded with information in the social media or in the recommendations that we get when we log into our favorite websites, those kind of have a influence on us, and they learn from our experiences, and they figure out what we like and dislike, and it kind of get into an echo chamber, what we call filter bubble, and that kind of restricts your ability to get information freely in the sense that in a manner where you are not interpreted as you are so and so kind of person. So we generally like to get information in a neutral fashion. There are times we would like to get recommendation engine, because if I am a cricket fan, then I would like more of cricket news to come. So that way it's fine. But there are times when we want to be taking a role of a person who is not be understood by the technology, right? The moment somebody on the other side understands me to be a kind of person, then they keep feeding me information which either I will like, or sometimes when they're paid to influence me or to nudge me towards a desirable behavior. Desirable to whom? Desirable for them. And often because of subconscious elements, we tend to fall prey to that. And we saw what happened in Cambridge Analytica and several other cases like that. So this quadrant should be ideally small, but this is becoming bigger. And this is what we need to be careful to control. So if you look, remember that the first slide where I showed the information autonomy, right? When you want to show what. So if you have those 4 quadrants balance of all the 4 states of privacy, then you know when to disclose information rather than the external entities exploiting and taking data from you. So emerging technologies that are happening, there are, we know AI and machine learning, particularly machine learning based AI has caused a huge benefit it brought in for people. We don't even have to discuss. There are a plethora of use cases everywhere. It is giving us positive results. There's so much of benefit we get in terms of automation, the speed of processing, the coordinated learning that happens in autonomous cars, and generative AI, right? We all use that. But there are privacy concerns which need to be addressed, which even the regulators have prescribed, both in GDPR. We are right against automated decision making and profiling. You're familiar with that. In the Europe is also coming with the EU AI Act, and some other regulations are also, and guidances frameworks have been enacted. It's important to understand how these impact. There are broadly two areas of concern in AI when we talk of privacy. There are pre-AI, which is deployment, which is learning stage, and post learning, which is deployment stage. In the learning stage, the data that is collected often is from sources which are either unknown to us or have been maybe got from web scraping, where the lawful basis of processing is not known. There is no question of any consent. We will not know at all whether there is any notice of consent. And in fact, it is disproportionately expensive to think of providing notice of consent. So that's a big area of concern today when we talk about learning and generative AI. How do we apply the lawful basis? And I'm sure the regulations will understand that limitation, and we will see how the laws shape up. But today, it's one of the gray areas where the learning data is taken often from sources which are unknown to us, and that itself poses risk for the companies. And therefore, in addition to that, the laws require data subject rights to be fulfilled, which is impossible for when you don't even know the source of information. And there's some other cases which I will talk about a while later, which has very serious implications when we use AI in certain biometric areas. The other is about deployment stage. In the deployment stage, the decision making can be biased, may lack explainability, may have other issues. For instance, the model may be inaccurate. So there are about 6 to 7 principles you would be familiar with, but those principles are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Most of them actually overlap, and some of them lead to the other. And therefore, we don't need to get into details of that, but it's important to know that the implications that it will have when decisions are taken on people. So not related to people, I'm not going to cover here. So whenever decisions are taken, we want them to be accurate and fair. But if you see, the entire AI and machine learning based AI is based on statistical probability. The Bayes theorem is what applies, where the probability of the conditional probability theorems, and every time it learns, it updates its knowledge, and therefore the knowledge gets more enriched. But theoretically, it is impossible to say at any time that it is going to be 100% accurate. The accuracy will always be not 100% because of statistical learning. And hence, it is unfair for anybody to expect that AI will give you accurate responses. However, it is fine for us to live with reasonably accurate responses in most day-to-day applications. And that's how AI is going to be very, very popular in most of the applications, because we are only talking of healthcare, autonomous cars, aircrafts. So barring areas where it will have a irreversible impact on safety, privacy, security, etc., and health, we are not so much concerned about 100% accuracy. And that's where AI has a huge impact and positive impact it has. In other areas, we need to dwell and dig deep and figure out what's the best way. And for instance, for explainability, it's very difficult to ensure explainability along with other attributes like accuracy, etc. So there are models like Lime and all that, which when deployed can actually give you an estimate of what factors went into the learning and what were the weightage of each factors which played a role in your decision. Let's say you were denied a credit card. Why were you denied the credit card? Or why were you denied employment if AI was used? So which factors contributed to it can be reasonably understood through models like Lime. But are they 100% accurate? No. Particularly when the number of dimensionality problem, we call it, number of attributes increase, then these models like Lime do not function properly. And in reality, for AI to perform better, it is very, very important to get maximum number of attributes, except those attributes which are not relevant, which can impact and cause bias. For instance, if you're talking about recruitment, then you don't want some algorithm to look at religion or race or your father's income, things like that, which are not relevant to assess your competency for the job. So those data minimization principle you apply and then deploy these models. Most of the applications should be reasonably good. However, there are applications where additional measures needs to be taken. For instance, in healthcare, we know that we need to also establish causation. The entire ML machine learning is based on correlation, and correlation is statistically derived. And correlation does not mean there is a cause and effect relationship. And we often ignore causation. Most applications we are not bothered about causation. But applications like healthcare, you need to understand what is the cause and effect, because often you get to not root cause, but you need to test superficial cause. You look at and start treating the disease, which is very dangerous. And so causation is also an important area when you take decisions. In addition to the fact that bias and accuracy needs to be rewarded. So bias is, again, there's so many types of biases, and which all need to be addressed. And there are statistical measures which are evolving. Companies are deploying to handle that. But so overall, this AI and privacy, there's an overlap, but we need to navigate carefully when we talk of data privacy. The next one I want to talk about is briefly is brain-computer interface. This is a very evolving technology. There are a lot of applications, some intrusive, some non-intrusive. There's a huge advancements done in this area where people who have disabilities can perform like a normal, almost like a normal function because of these probes and the devices. But on the other side, some of the technologies can get into an area where they can almost read your thoughts. There's a technology which has come up which can now tell you when you're about to speak. There is a small fraction of a second gap between the time you are about to speak and when you speak. That fraction of a second, that impulse which goes, can be captured technologically and can be used for processing. And this is very useful for people who are not able to have speaking disabilities. For them, it's a huge boon. Sorry. And that is a very, very positive sign for us to have such technologies. But on the other hand, if some of these can read our thoughts or read our statements which are about to speak, but often when we don't speak, if it can get into that territory, then possibly it can also exploit our thoughts. It can get into that zone. So at the moment we may call it science fiction, but if we get into that zone, we need to be careful on what privacy considerations it can have. But otherwise, it has huge potential benefits. Algorithmic image search engines, is publicly available data free. So there are we used to have traditional thought that anything which is on the public domain is free, and that's what we believe today. In fact, many regulations exempt you from any liability if you process data available publicly. But can you process biometric data? So there is a company called Clearview. You could Google and find out, which was actually fined. It has very good search engine. It developed algorithmic image search engine, very, very beneficial use case they deployed. But because of some privacy considerations, they kind of got into trouble. We still don't know what will happen to that case, but many countries in Europe, they find this company. But what course it will take, we still don't know. The case is not closed, I think, in many cases. But the technology they're using is that they extracted some 20 billion images from the websites, public scraping, and those images then were converted into algorithmically the form by vector by which when you upload any image, then you can actually, that engine will tell you which all photos you appear and what is the IP address of that website where you can go and find out where you are. Now, the positive side of this is this company said that they will give this software only to law enforcement agencies. In America, they were using it. Hugely beneficial if you want to identify a suspect who was involved in a crime. But will the laws allow? We don't yet know, because the people whose data was used are questioning, because there's no lawful basis, there's no consent. And what if tomorrow the use case gets into a service where anybody's image you put and it can tell to spy around you if I want to find out where you were last Sunday or last vacation were you in Rome, or last Sunday were you in church, or so I could figure out much more about you. And when I'm talking about the images that it gives me when I put your photograph, it is the images, not yours. These are images which were taken by other people in the world where you are also available. The images that people take on the streets where you and I are part of it, we don't care today, right? People take images in the public street, but today we didn't. But tomorrow we may have to worry, because tomorrow we don't know that how the algorithms will behave, and where I will be exposed, where I will be knowing. As long as we don't do anything illegitimate, we don't have to be worried. Of course, that's another way of look at it. But the concerns are that the mere fact that such a technology exists, if it becomes widespread use, then we may get into a zone of concerns where privacy has to be privacy considerations have to be built into it, and we need to. It's interesting to see what shape this will take. Let's wait and see. Privacy nutrition label. Some companies are talking about it. Some have deployed already that can we have nutrition labels where if I take an app or buy a product, it will tell me just like we have calories and protein and carbohydrate. So this will tell what kind of data sharing happens, what APIs it uses, which kind of information it collects. At a very high level, it will give you that information, but it may not be a substitute for privacy notice, but maybe it will be for when we have devised modular privacy notices, layered privacy notices. Maybe this could serve as the first level notice possibly. So we need to wait and see. But this kind of things are also coming up, which may be very interesting. And maybe we could classify into several buckets. Most people do not have time to go through detailed privacy notices. So maybe we could think of identifying or clustering people into 3-4 buckets. People who are extremely privacy conscious, moderate, and very social, least bothered, or they are willing to share data. Like that, if you make 3-4 buckets and put these labels and say that you can choose which one you want, possibly that could be the direction for reducing the burden on the consumer, particularly when consumers in certain parts are not literate enough to understand the implications of how data is processed, what happens to that, what technologies are used. So that way nutrition labels could have a future. We need to wait and see. ZKP, zero knowledge proof, a very important emerging technology. It's called privacy enhancing technology. It's a cryptographic primitive, very, very useful, but still a lot of progress required for adoption. We wonder that why the adoption has not increased, because day by day the progress is towards making it easily accessible. This is based on the fact that you do not convey the information you need to prove, but you convey some other information which will believe the verifier that what you are saying is right. Assertion, we call it. Suppose you want to prove somebody that you are above 18 age, then you don't show them identity card. Instead, you have some assertion statements made, and through a exchange of such information, you can prove that you are above 18, but without actually showing the ID card. So this is already being used in certain countries, and there are a lot of promising use cases for this. So these are kind of help you to fulfill the data minimization requirements, particularly when sensitive data is required to be transmitted, to be shared. If you need to fulfill one objective today, we end up sharing much more information than that. So there, in such areas, ZKP has a tremendous application. Privacy by design, it is a very essential part today. It's all of you will know that it's supposed to be part of our work culture. It's far more expensive to unearth the security and privacy concerns during testing and fixing them than it is to incorporate them into the design stage, requirement stage. And therefore, we all in the industry focus on privacy by design, and that's the way it should be. In fact, if you have read the Indian way, that the entire architecture, DPI, digital public infrastructure, is embracing privacy by design in a very novel way by calling it the third way, where the entire regulations is embedded as part of technology. So this is a very novel idea, and India has demonstrated the way, and maybe the world will also go towards it. We'll have to wait and see. That will be very useful to see how this will go. In fact, you could read, when I said the third way here, it's a book by Rahul Mathan, a well-known privacy lawyer. You can read the book called The Third Way. It's got published a few months ago. Anonymity. Is still a myth? Anonymity used to be a myth in cyberspace. It probably is. We have now sophisticated tools like differential privacy, but still, the computing technologies are moving at much faster pace, and the ability to re-identify data in the sense that convert a non-PII, so-called non-PII to PII, is also becoming viable. And therefore, the race between these will continue, just like encryption is becoming traditional encryption is being obsolete with quantum computing coming up. So we always will have this race, but we have a lot of work to do, and this is definitely we need to work towards building anonymity and pseudonymity power. So the de-identification tools and processes are extremely important. Privacy preserving path for data minimization, also for unlinkability, by which you want to convey less information, and you also see that the ability to glean the databases, your identity across databases is curtailed. And that's what would give you greater privacy than if you can uniquely identify everywhere, right? So that anonymity helps you to create that unlinkability. What are some of the newer regulatory perspectives that are coming up? Data subject rights, we prefer to call individual. India called it rightly so. We don't want to call data subject. Individual rights are very important part of any DP law, and these laws, these rights are not kind of complaints. They are not necessarily grievances. Rights are the ability for you to exercise access to more information about how your data is processed, or where is it residing, or is it still being used, or how a decision was taken, including your automated decision making AI. So these rights are will continue to remain. There are rights which ask questions which are kind of tending towards complaint. For instance, you may complain and say that why was my data misused, and the intention is that, but you'll say that I want to access information, and then you'll probably challenge. So rights and grievances both work together, and both of these are covered in GDPR and also in our Indian DPDP law. But how much of rights are right? We will see possibly a lot of misuse. There'll be a lot of frivolous requests, people using this route to extract other information or to meet other goals. So that's a part of the game. And I think as data privacy professionals, we have no way to discriminate. Any request that is falling under the category of DSR must be handled by a DPO. And even if it means it's going to be difficult, and it is going to be difficult, some of them, particularly because companies have huge unstructured data. Traditionally, that was what used to be. And retrieving data becomes very difficult when you have lots of unstructured data. Anything that is not prohibited by law is permitted. We know that laws do not create whitelists, they create blacklists. So if something is not written as blacklist in the law, you can do it. And that's how it should be. And that's how the various innovative technologies come up. The Clearview case I talked about, the app taking remaining battery power I spoke about. So all these use cases, until prohibited, they're all permitted. So wherever there is economics, it makes economic sense. Technologies will come up, businesses will run it until it's prohibited to be law. So that's where I think it's important to understand the role of data ethics, which is also part of kind of ESG, and many of the companies go for sustainability initiatives. So ethics varies between companies to companies, but data ethics is somewhat common, and it is about how to handle data responsibly, whether AI or no AI. Data ethics is very important to see that the consumer and the customer or citizen is empowered, and they are the ones who are respected, and they come first and not the business comes first. So the interest should be such that it's a participative engagement, and where you feel it's not about that you cannot make money. It's of course, businesses is about making money. It's about being transparent. Let them make an informed decision whether they want to participate in this or plan A or plan B. so that they don't get a surprise. So it's about that. Because privacy is often about information. It's not always about consent. So consent, in fact, is rarely should be used because consent comes with a lot of burden of withdrawability, revocability. It has to be fair. It has to be between equal parties. It has to be explicit. It has to be fully informed. So most often companies rely on other legal basis, and consent should be only taken when it is purely a choice matter. If it's not a choice matter, consent should not be used. In fact, in most jurisdictions, I won't talk about Indian law because Indian DP law, the rules are yet to be framed, and when it comes, we'll have to see how it is to be interpreted. We have not yet got the experience. Trained data on AI. So many laws are asking us to now disclose the source of learning data. Now, this could be a challenge for the companies, but then this is a requirement from the both from privacy perspective and IP perspective. From IP perspective, it could be also an issue because you don't want to disclose the source of the data. But if you know the source, then you get some kind of confidence that that the data is legitimate, you're not collected from web scraping, etc. B, that it is legitimately acquired, and there tomorrow you don't end up into a problem of not fulfilling, let's say, data subject rights or being questioned. So the whole AI landscape is evolving, and once these laws come up, we will actually see what this means because they have multiple regulatory connotations, and some of them are actually overlapping and conflicting. For biometric consent, I think when I spoke about Clearview, I was mentioning this particularly that one of the, if you read these judgments, one of the things that came up was that there were this collected biometric without consent. So biometric is increasingly useful for many applications, but the most of the regulations ask to take consent. Other legal basis is not permitted for biometric, and that's a catch where industry struggles on how do you collect biometric, and not take consent. If you take consent, then consent is optional, but you require biometric certain times. So this is not an easy problem to solve, but it's interesting to dwell deeper and introspect. Disclosure on source of training data on AI. I think this is a repetition. Consent manager. It's a new type of entity, very forward-thinking aspect. The goal is to see that the individual, that means the data principal in Indian language, is who is empowered on how the data is exchanged, whose data goes to whom. The consent manager is a newer role created in DPDP law also, and even before that we have something called account aggregator, which is approved by RBI. There are about 10 of them players who are actually called consent managers, which are approved by the right authority, and they actually on your behalf can share data from one entity to the other, one bank to the other bank, let's say. And these consent managers themselves actually become data fiduciary, not for the data that you are talking about, but the data of you and the fact that you are allowing bank A to data go to bank B. So that way they become fiduciaries, but consent manager detaches the burden of consents from company A, company B to individual entity. And maybe in future, as we go along, more kinds of entities, maybe in health sector, maybe in education sector. So if these things evolve, then we will see lesser burden of information floating around on the emails, etc., right, in the physical copies, etc. So it's a very forward initiative, and we need to see how this shapes up. And will we one day, for instance, have a situation where we have all the consents centrally maintained by one entity? I'm not sure. I don't know. None of us will know. And before we talk about whether we know or not, is this good? So normally we would not like one entity to know everything about us. In fact, my privacy preferences also are kind of personal information, because what I like and what I don't like to share kind of is also my own digital footprints. And so although these entities will become fiduciary, the idea of having everything under that one consent manager may also be a thing which you need to study and see whether it is, from privacy perspective, is it safe. But we are not anywhere near that anymore. Afterlife privacy. So this is also an interesting perspective which came in now in India, and very few countries have this provision. it's very important from two perspectives. One, that your data, what happens to that after your life, although you don't exist anymore, but your family does, your close people, friends does, and there could be need for them to access your data. And some of the data is such that where if that is compromised, then your partner, your spouse also, their data is also compromised. And therefore, it is essential to have safeguards in place even when one of us are not there anymore. So that perspective. The other perspective is we all wish when we are alive, we all wish we will have we'll continue to have maintain a good impression about ourselves when we are no more. And that's every one of us have this desire that when we are no more, people still talk good about us. And for that reason, it's important to see that information which I showed you in slide 1, which is my quite autonomous information about which I don't want to convey. That kind of information should remain with me and should not be disclosed to anyone, even after my death. So for that reason, the control needs to be with me, and that control you cannot exercise when you're no more, obviously. So it's a very good positive thing that we will be able to exercise that decision on what kinds of information I want to destroy when I'm gone and what kind of information I'm okay to share. And these are the people I want to share different kinds of things. So that's what is, I think, very important connotation when I read through this. Although these are not defined anywhere, but this is my reading from how it is impacting privacy. I think we are in the last slide. Enhanced role of privacy professionals. So privacy professionals, when I say it, I'm not meaning whether you're a DPO or a CPO or a privacy engineer, or you're simply a data engineer who are also touching privacy. So for all of us who play the role of privacy, have privacy in our work, we need to understand it's a multidisciplinary function. It is technology, legal, statistics, process, all these human rights. So all these are together embedded into this profession. And that's how I see it's very difficult for us to evolve a curriculum around it. We're also thinking about it. We want to create that kind of curriculum in academia where we get privacy engineers and privacy professionals coming out of the colleges. But it is a multidisciplinary function where you need to have all these understanding. So who should join this, whether engineers or lawyers? Anyone can join, provided they are okay to learn the other aspects. So we don't need to stereotype people that he's an engineer or he's a lawyer or he's a statistician. As long as we are willing to learn, and there's no age limit, and all of us can switch. And it's not necessary to have formal degree, but it's important to appreciate this all. And thankfully, there are a lot of certifications available in the market also, which help you to benchmark yourself. They often don't train you, but they actually help you to benchmark. When AI has come up, AI is a big thing. It will remain, and responsible AI, all organizations are doing it. Many organizations are going for responsible AI frameworks, their own. And this, the framework that we're talking about, what is the role of DPO in this? It's to be understood. So AI, the people who develop AI are the engineers who are involved in the platform or a solution that they develop. But there has to be a oversight mechanism which goes into and sees that all the aspects of the regulation on bias and explainability, security attacks like model inversion attacks, all those are taken care of. And that should be done by probably not by one set of function today, but multiple kinds of functions in the organization may be involved. We need to see. But privacy professionals have a major role, I would say, particularly those applications of AI which are touching personal information, and there are good amount of them today in the market, and most of them are actually talking of them more than the autonomous cars. And therefore, we have a very important role. So as privacy professionals, we must understand AI very well, understand these concepts of what is explainability and what is transparency, what is interpretability, what is bias, what is fairness. Are they same or are they different? Discrimination, bias, fair, accuracy, these are all overlapping. So we should understand what is our role. In fact, there is a good amount of overlap between GDPR and AI Act when it comes to AI and privacy. So that intersection is there. And in fact, we have seen that data privacy regulators are fining companies which are not compliant to AI aspects, privacy aspects of AI. Several of them have been fined in Europe in the last few years, we've seen. And when the EU AI Act comes or other AI Acts come, they also probably will be regulated. Now, which regulator will play a role? Who will be doing this job inside the company is something yet to be seen. But I see DPOs taking a lead everywhere when it comes to privacy. You would have seen in the privacy community, and we should see that we gear up and play that role. Certifications, this I'm talking about individual certifications. So individual certifications like privacy certifications, plenty of them in the market today. These are important only to demonstrate your capability or to benchmark yourself to say that I'm kind of this, I achieved this scale of this, say, a technology expert or a DPO, certified DPO, etc. But it's important to understand that certifications are focused on the aim is to on learning, but the certifications are at the end of the day they are an exam, and there are abilities you could acquire, some of us could acquire to crack the exam rather than learn the subject and appreciate what is privacy. So I think it's important when you take these certifications that go to the depth, spend time, work in a profession, and then take the certification. A lot of people I'm seeing in the field, the domain, who are there, who have got all these certifications, but do not understand basics of privacy. So it's unfortunate that I see that. I hope that these examinations are tweaked in a manner where they actually test the ability of holistic knowledge and not just about cracking exam. So that's a very important point I want to bring when some of you aspire to become some of these get certifications. DPO independence inside your organizations, it's important to see that your function is independent. That independence is becoming more and more important because of the conflicts that arise, because of the autonomy that you need to have for the role that you play. You should be able to stop processing of data, which some of your peers may be doing in the company. Some of the senior leaders may be involved in an organization. Who it could be CTO, it could be CIOs, marketing guys, it could be a business head. So some of these people want to develop some technology which probably they don't understand that they violate privacy. So it's for you to be able to stop that or question that. You should be suitably positioned, and that independence must be guaranteed in your company, and you should see that you do not have an overlapping role with business. So that's what GDPR tells, and I'm assuming that Indian DPDP also will talk about that independence. It does talk about reporting to top management, but will companies be fined for this? If playing different roles? We don't know, but the least expected from you is that you do not have any overlap with a business role, and you have direct access to top management. Sustenance of compliance. Compliance is not a one-time activity. See, we often get into this thing that we all say that, okay, we have to be compliant to DPDP law or some ISO certification. We all get together. It's a program initiative. Senior management calls for a meeting. We all buy technologies, tools, define policies, processes, burn midnight oil, get certification, and go for a celebration. And that's it. And we all get back to work. Privacy security takes backseat. So it's important to know that compliance is a continuous journey, because what you did yesterday is not same as today. Technologies change, processes change, people make changes based on the business circumstances, based on your technologies, right? And they may not come and tell you. So it's important for you to sustain the efforts by constantly verifying, auditing, checking what's happening, and have mechanisms in place which will tell you that things are changing in the company, and that those mechanisms play a very, very crucial role, including the inventory, data inventory, sign-offs. So if you don't have that, all that you did will collapse one day. And one of the ways to achieve this is to go for one of the standard certifications, like in the market they're available now. For security, we used to be ISO 27001. For privacy, we have other certifications. I'll show you. I think there's one more slide I missed that I will talk about it in that. And have the focus both on process and governance, technology and process and governance. Do not blindly go for technologies. Make sure that those technologies can be institutionalized within your network, within your domain. within your IT infrastructure. Some of those things may not work well. So it is not necessarily to always to buy technologies to enhance privacy or security. Security, of course, you need technologies, but for privacy, sometimes homegrown technologies are enough. You may want to sometimes procedural changes are also enough. So it is the technology is required, particularly in privacy by design, but the technologies must be such that they have to be completely deeply embedded inside the processes and not the other way around. Standards and frameworks. So we have an NIST framework, we have ISO standards. So these all standards are like you have 27001 for security. We have something called 27701 for privacy. Many of you may be familiar with that. It was published in September 2019. And this is like any company, any auditing company like DNV, BVC, all those companies can come and certify you. So this advantage of these certifications is that they are PIMS, what we call Privacy Information Management System or Personal Information Management System. So they ensure a rigor of process. There's periodic audits. There's an external entity coming and monitoring and recognizing that you are benchmarked against others. So that way it plays a huge role because you yourself need that intervention to be taken seriously. So it is every periodic audits. I think they do once in a year. They do a surveillance audit, and that brings the seriousness within the community. In addition, of course, you need to have internal audits and checks more often, maybe once in a month, once in a quarter. But this helps to get that kind of assurance both for consumers and for customers and for regulators also. Regulators do not recognize any of these standards as a substitute for compliance to DP regulations, but the possibility that it will help you to demonstrate due diligence in the event of a breach. In the event of a breach, if regulators come after you, then you can show that you have emulated and embraced these standards and the company takes this seriously. And therefore, the possibility of you getting fined is lower because of if you do these jobs very well and demonstrate seriousness, then definitely the regulators may take it as one-off case. So that's the advantage you get from this. We also have an Indian standard IS 17428. It has got published in 2021 timeframe, and this is different from 27701, and this is available for certification. Currently, we are revising this to align. We are about to start revision of this with reference to the new regulation, so that these are handled by Bureau of Indian Standards. So they are the ones who will take this journey of periodic revisions and making it available for certification. But currently it's available until BIS tells you otherwise. So these are the standards. NIST is not certifiable, but others are. I think this is what I had to cover in. I hope, Dr. Sriram, I have not exceeded the time. We have time for questions. I hope I could provide insights and open up your thoughts for you to read more, maybe, and come back with more questions and think of improvements. So the idea was not to take you through the regulations and data privacy aspects. Over to you, Sai Prakash.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
You have time for questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Certainly. Hey, it was a very beautiful session, really. And this is much more interesting than the usual standard readout of the DPDP Act, which is of course mandatory, but this really goes into the and gives very deep insights into privacy. Well, thank you very much for that. So I myself had one question. See, sure, the way AI is positioned now, that we say that yes, AI can be this, can be that, there can be mistakes in AI, and that happens in cybersecurity or elsewhere also, let's say autonomous cars or something else. So one of the things is that there is always a thing showcasing, saying that this one, okay, an AI makes a mistake, maybe it is 1 in 10 lakhs. When a human being makes a mistake, it is 1 in 1 lakh or something like that, right? And hence this system is better. So that's how they demonstrate for this thing. Say the accident rate, maybe it will commit an accident, but that is one in so many, which is far, far an order of magnitude superior to what human being will do. Say, for example, facial recognition. Okay. So you'd say that, yes, there is chance that a percentage, because everything is probability after all, even if you're a human being were to do it, there is still a percentage of chance that he may miss it. And so by everywhere, by demonstrating that those systems are superior, and that's the whole game, right here. That's why they need more data and more these things and do that. So what do you have to say about that? And that's certainly the way things seem to be headed.
Yeah, I think it depends on the application. There are very big advantages of AI, in particular the example you took of autonomous cars. But you see, we still had an accident in California. I remember where a car had hit a lorry and it mistook the silver paint of the lorry as sky. And it was a fatal accident. So I think the problem is, I think we will have to wait for some more years. In fact, this right now on autonomous cars, it's almost like a winter now. So the entire heat is gone, and I'm assuming that it will soon come up. But the advantage of autonomous cars, if you take example, that the learning in a human is that when you go and we all learn car, right, driving, and even now we probably certain experiences we never had, we learn, okay, if this is how it happens, this is the way I should react. Right, we all do that, particularly in the early stages of life. Today, we can listen to music and keep talking to people and drive. But at early stage, we constantly learn by looking at what's happening. Right, same, the Bayes theorem applies. Same AI and human brains are not any different. But in human case, if I do a mistake, not fatal mistake, not a serious mistake, but small mistake, I can take a corrective action next time, right? But I cannot probably get my daughter or son or wife to do that, because they also need to experience the same to be able to correct themselves. In AI, if you do design it very well with a coordinated effort, all the cars can talk to each other. Then one car learns a particular scenario, all cars will learn that. So the compounding effect is huge there, which is not there in humans. My learnings can never be given to you. I have to sit and spend hours and hours to explain you what I learned yesterday. And that learning which I did is not by reading books, by falling, by slipping on the road, right? By simple things which unconsciously we learn. So that's a big advantage of AI, but you need to give time, because we learned after so many years, right? When a child is born, until they reach some age of 5 or 6, the mother is always with them. Why? Because we know that's a learning phase. So like that, I think the autonomous cars in the learning phase, probably we give time, then there'll be a day when we'll be like a adult. That's what my view is, because the LiDAR, which is there, the ability to decipher various scenarios, have a 360-degree view, not 360, 270-degree view, decipher various scenarios. And our understanding of how machine learning works itself is at nascent stage, right? Why hallucinations happen, right? Why certain times it gives you the original data which it has learned and not the inferred data. So I think if we can give the time, probably one day we will have these autonomous systems far superior to humans. But I don't know when that day will come. But definitely there are areas where humans will be superior. I would say that. I don't want to say which is better. I want to avoid that response. But I hope I gave some perspectives.
Oh, yeah, excellent perspective. So one more question is that if you see the privacy, people look at it in different ways. For example, the US privacy laws, because they're very federated in different sectors and various things, state-wise and all that, they're very business focused. Okay, I mean, to improve the business. China is very government focused, meaning that it's the government which sets everything. Okay, Europe is very individual focused, individual rights, individual listings, right? And India has strived to achieve a balance, and it's an architecture focused. I think it's more of an architecture or framework approach it has taken. Okay, so given this, are there the pros and cons or advantages, disadvantages? For example, let's say China has ready access to tons of citizens' data, no consent, no nonsense, right? So it can develop far superior AI systems, okay, because it can just train people on whether they're using a credit card, their privacy. I mean, there's hardly any default, probably very low privacy. Of course, they have laws and all that, but given this, they will have, so they seem to have an inherent advantage over the others who have to jump through a lot of hoops to get hold of their data. So we know that at least one guy, not one guy, one group actually said they went and trained the data on dark web, where that is fully free, and dark BERT, if you know, that's far, its performance is far superior to the normal generative AI systems and all this. So given this, I'd like your comments on this, that how should ecosystem shape or the privacy regimes shape up?
Yeah, so I think this is my personal view. Obviously, I'm not in favor of a regime where there is constant surveillance going on, and because we humans are, if you remember my first slide, we need that freedom of thought to be an individual. And if you're constantly under surveillance, then we don't become we become you. I lose my eye, and I want to, if you're the person surveilling me, I want to satisfy you. So there's this called, in psychological terms, we call it Hawthorne effect. So Hawthorne effect is the psychological impact it has, where I will no longer be what I am, and I will try to satisfy you and behave. Right, people, for example, in workplace surveillance, they monitor you, expected to look at, type some keys, not look at to the other side of the keyboard for a long time, not more than, let's say, 10 seconds. So instead of focusing on work, you will try to satisfy those requirements to be looking at the camera and all that stuff. Now, social scoring had some advantages. They had that intent of China's social scoring system. It expected people to be given incentives. So the people who are law-abiding are happy with that because they get brownie points. People who are not will get punished. Punished means, not serious punishment, fines, etc. So it's a kind of situation where, and if you read more Professor Alan Weston's readings, right, you'll see that this is a very, very fundamental for democracies. China is not a democracy, so we can't talk about it in our. It's very difficult for us to relate to it. But in democracies, we should never do that kind of situation, because if you read more at the fundamental level, it says that, I think it's in the layer self-esteem, self-realization, that humans should be allowed to do mistakes, which are not serious in nature, and such mistakes should be pardoned and should not be made public. So if you have traffic offense you had, right? You parked no parking zone and you got fined 5 years ago. I should not know that. That information should not be public. I don't want to use that information because I may be biased that Sriram doesn't follow traffic rules. So small mistakes must be concealed, and there is nobody's business to make it public. So that's the fundamental flaw in the social scoring, that the reward mechanisms and punishment mechanisms such that it is a constant surveillance puts pressure on people to completely be a robot, not a human anymore, in my view.
Yeah. I perfectly, fully agree. I couldn't agree with you more. So does that beg the case for really better and better pets? Systems, privacy enhancing systems, so that you have more anonymization, because otherwise some regimes will become very strong in AI because they have loads of data from everywhere.
Sriram, I think this is not so much to do with technology. It is, first of all, if your laws are framed around this, then the intent is itself to surveil you and punish you or reward you.
Correct.
Then why do we need technologies? The intention is to capture. If private parties are doing it, private companies are, right, non-government entities are doing it, we can question them. You cannot question the government, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. So given that AI has also become a race now, so access to data and has become very expensive. In fact, one of the reasons why they went OpenAI had to go to Microsoft and raise funds and all that, because access to data and everything became terribly expensive. But in order to democratize that a little bit, and I agree with all the fundamentals, there's no doubt about it. The reality of the situation is some people seem to have more access to data somehow or the other. And maybe even the social media and all those things, probably they are surveilling and taking a lot of data and all these kinds of things. But norms and all these regimes, maybe 137 countries are adopting privacy norms. This will happen. So we need to move to a case where probably we have very strong, very good privacy laws and very good privacy enabling technologies, so that data is made available in an anonymous manner. Otherwise, how are you going to train and bring out superior medical devices, superior medicines at a lower cost? You're hopelessly dependent on someone who, with very deep pockets, who managed to bring out that drug or something like that, right? Okay, to inpatient healthcare and all. Yeah. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So we need, you're right. We need the privacy enhancing technologies. I took examples of ZKP. We have anonymization technologies. We don't have to go to differential privacy. There are simpler techniques which are easier to perform for most day-to-day applications, except healthcare. So those applications should be enough to use deployed, whereby you can achieve what you want to, the use case, at the same time not violate privacy and prevent linkability. So that's what is a win-win case. And we should also have administrative procedures to not ask your unique identity. For example, do I need your Aadhaar for if you're boarding a flight or you're going to a pub? I don't need your Aadhaar. Yeah. I'm just example to prove. Maybe somebody has to show their ID card to say they are not a student below 18. They need to show it, but you don't need to take a copy of it. So I think those safeguards are very important, which we need to. So the problem is we have to achieve the other aspect of security. To right security is, whether are you authorized person, are you in the no-fly list, let's say. So those aspects should be handled in a different procedure than asking, you cannot disproportionately burden individuals to collect data just for few cases. So the right balance is required.
Yeah. Anything on open data? Sorry, quick question. The whole open data initiative of government.
I think I would prefer to stay away from getting into that for now. Open data because it's a different matter where my comments should not be good, appropriate.
Okay, so we have some
refrain from speaking anything on what government is doing. Yeah. It's not good for me to speak. Here I'm speaking only for the privacy subject.
Yes, I know. I mean, relative to that. Okay, we have some questions on this thing on the chat.
Yes, sir.
Somebody will read it? Sure?
Yes, sir. I'll be reading it.
Yeah.
So we have two questions, sir. One is from Shushant Annepu. How are data fiduciaries categorized as significant data fiduciaries?
So that is something the law is clearly specifying some criteria, right? Of what is SDF. They have put criteria like the amount of data they process, the harm. I think various aspects have been taken care of, right? But more details I think are expected, I'm assuming, in the rules. As of now, the rules are not yet out. They should be able to tell what exactly are the 5 or 10 criteria by which company will fall under SDF. I think until then we should not speculate. But I'm assuming that companies which process more data or sensitive data, volumes of data, some criteria like that should be there. But let's not speculate. I think we'll wait for the rules.
Yeah, you're in mute, Sai.
Sorry, sir. Sorry. We have one more question, sir. Has the data protection board already been set up? Who will constitute the board?
No, data protection board is not yet set up. So this is information you can find in the Google itself. You don't ask me, but it's not yet set up. I think what government has said is that after the rules are released, they will parallelly work to create that. First rules have to come and then they'll work for it. Not yet.
Yes. So audience, the mic is enabled to all the participants. So we'll be opening the chat option, like the Q&A session for 5 more minutes. So I request if you have any doubts, please unmute yourself and ask your questions. So we have one more question from Narayan Rao. How far India is prepared for cybersecurity threats?
See, cybersecurity is not the subject we are covering today. And cybersecurity threat cybersecurity is a constantly evolving threat. I'm not wanting to answer that question because I'm not a cybersecurity expert. So let me stay away. But since you asked, you can, if I had to give you a generalist answer, cybersecurity is a constantly evolving field. And we, no matter what we do, the hackers seem to be in one step ahead, but we have to keep on constantly working together with our certain and other agencies, with our vendor ecosystem, and constantly strengthen. Never basically become complicit. At any time, no matter, you do your best, invest, constantly reassess the threat scenario because the threat landscape constantly changes. That's how it would be my answer. Sriram, you can add.
Oh, yeah. So the short answer would be get plugged into our CCOE programs. Okay, you'll get to know a lot more because it's a vast landscape. There are ranging from chip level security to network security to cloud level, cyber forensics, many areas are there. Now, that said, one thing is that it is gearing up really well because India has woken up to these threats, and there are a number of organizations, like, for example, NCIIPC, which is looking at critical infrastructure. Plus, there are a number of standards that are coming out. New cyber framework coming from National Coordinator's Office. To many things. So here I would stop because you please subscribe to those links which Sai Prakash has put out. We are rolling out entire 2024 calendar is there for you to explore that. I see one thing in one statement, guess we are far ahead than many countries. Yes. Okay, but still we have a long way to go. The other thing is what would be the basic skills the freshers need to possess to land a job in privacy domain?
See, I think because if somebody is a fresher, you cannot have experience. We all look for experienced people, but I know that to get experience, you have to join somewhere. So that's a chicken and egg situation. So I think if you're a completely beginner, it's better to take some certifications which will prepare you and at least put you into that group of professionals who get a kind of a benchmark your performance, a kind of yardstick to say that, okay, you at least passed this exam. And you have to join at an entry level. I'm assuming that now with the DPDP law coming, many companies would need people. And therefore, the chances of more roles coming up for privacy guys will be higher. That way, we should look forward to. But certification should be good.
Yes, I guess some
places. And DSCI itself is offering certifications, right?
Yes.
Sriram,
and of course, like data certified DCP LP and then DCP LA, both are there. And also you can, if not get a direct job, you can do internships after you get certification and you do that, get the relevant background, which will help you with you can do internships in some places. That's an excellent entry point into different places, right? So that's one good thing.
But some certification should be good start along with internship. And then normally people don't like to take freshers because we all want experienced people, right? But as the demand is growing, I think the experienced professionals in the supply will be not there. And therefore, I'm assuming that freshers also will have possibility. Or some of people, what they do is they work into data science or cybersecurity because there the jobs are more and then come to privacy. That's also one way.
Yeah. And many law courses, as well as many other even engineering courses, they are introducing an elective in privacy, data protection, and all of these. So they are coming prepared beforehand. Then a certification plus an internship should help in steadily. Right. And these roles are going to boom now. So it's going to be a very good booming market. Hey, one question here for you, Srinivas, is: are privacy and security mutually exclusive?
They are not mutually exclusive. They have they're different, but they have common areas. So security is one of the important principles of privacy. It is one of the very, very important principles of privacy, and security is essential for privacy, I would say. There's no compromise on that. But there are areas in privacy which have nothing to do with security, like data use, accuracy, fair use, which are not covered by security. Security is about CIA, which we call about confidentiality, integrity, developability. Privacy has other dimensions of storage limitation, fair use, legitimate basis, right? All those principles have huge meaning if you relate to what I spoke about and why should data be collected, what purpose it will be used, should it be kept longer, can it be used for decision making, what kind of decisions can be taken, decisional autonomy. Those are not areas of security. So the overlap comes because of this fact that security is one of the subsets of privacy. The other thing is, which is a little different angle I'm bringing, is in order to safeguard privacy, you need to safeguard security, for which you use tools like DLP, which sometimes become intrusive and create problem for privacy. So there is a loop there, and that is one of the reasons why a CISO should generally be not a privacy guy. DPO and CISO we generally keep separate because the CISO who focuses on cyber attacks and security will tend to use tools, increasingly detective tools, which may infringe onto privacy. Most of the cases, the tools are okay to use because you inside the corporate environment, for instance, you cannot claim privacy on a communication laptops, etc. But some countries, many countries, in particularly Europe and all, they will not agree for that stand. The limitations on how much you can intrude into privacy of people, even at workplace. So the careful balancing act is required depending on which regulations apply to you. And that's why the CISO and privacy sometimes the occasions when they don't agree to each other. So there's a conflict. But on many things, they have to work together because security is a requirement for privacy guys. And in fact, there are times when a DPO has to put a proposal of buying a tool, security tool. The DPO can take it to the board and get approved. So that's the kind of what do you call coordination required between the two. But there are times when they don't agree to each other. Both will be okay. A healthy conflict is also fine.
Yes. Sir, we have one more question from Raju. What are the control measures in place for public for awareness and control for capture of privacy, PII, sensitive info, including images, etc.? Also volunteering to disclosure of personal info for gaining the social benefits as available from political intent. Also insights on the info capture technologies from surveillance, cameras, drones, fingerprinting, etc. and cameras in public areas.
It's a very, very big statement you read, but the intent seems to be on what is the basis for collection of data and what are the expectations, right? What is the deal? So whenever information is collected by a company and captured for a purpose, then there has to be a reasonable logic for that, right? Lawful basis, which we call either it has to be consent, it has to be legitimate interest or performance of a contract or all those 6 areas, right? India is put in a different way, but broadly there are 5-6 areas by which you can capture information. In all these cases, notice is essential. So notice is going to inform you that the fact that there's information is being collected. Sometimes you don't know that information is collected. Not everything you share, right? If somebody asks you to fill a form, a web form, you know that you will have to give, otherwise the company can't take. But look at information which is taken without your knowledge. Cookies are placed on your laptop. GPS coordinates, my location details from cell phone is taken. I don't give it, it is taken. Some apps give you the permission, some always allow you, but some cases it may be taken without your knowledge. Your cookies, another example, it could be CCTV camera where you're walking. Nobody asks you, can I take your image? It's taken. So people put a notice. So it is fair to assume that many cases consent is not required, but notice is necessary everywhere. That's why you have noticed that this area is under surveillance. So the idea of that is that you are prepared to dress well or how you want the image to be taken. So you should take a risk. You take an informed decision whether you want to go to the place where there is surveillance going on. Do you want to share data in an app which will intrude into your habits? You may want to do that because you get a free gift. So the trade-off is for you to decide what is right and wrong. The law only tells that respect the choices given by people and make sure that there's a privacy notice and you have the access to data subject rights. That's all. That's what I would answer it as.
Thank you, sir. We have one more question from Rajat. Any entry-level certification that you recommend?
Yeah, we just now spoke. Dr. Sriram also said that in DSCI is offering DCPP, DCPLA, which are available entry level. I think DCPP is more entry level in my view. DCPLA is lead auditor course, which is I think requires some experience. Whether they require it or not, but it's generally recommended with some experience to become auditor. But DCPP should be the entry one. Similarly, in IIPP, in America offers at international level courses which are focused on Europe, Australia, Asia. So those courses, they're a little more expensive because the fees in dollars. So those are also entry level. They don't have entry level. They have CIPT, CIPM, management, technology, US, Europe, like that. So depending on what your aspirations are, you should choose the right one.
Yes. We have 2 questions from Annapurna Devi. The first one is, when the law expressly not provided for any rights or obligation on AI persons, as an architecture of the program, how we need to ensure of ethics for social economic cause?
When the rights are not provided, it's AI question, you said?
Yes, sir.
What, can you repeat?
When the law expressly not provided for any rights or obligation on AI persons, as an architecture of the program, how we need to ensure of ethics for social economic cause?
See, the DPDP law is not talking of AI. Maybe we'll have some other regulation in India which will talk of AI. We have to wait and see. But as of now, what we should view is AI is a technology. It has additional manifestations which we figured out, but AI is simply a technology, and you should subject it to privacy impact assessment like any other. You don't need a separate law. If law is there, fine. If not there, also you subject it to that. And from data privacy perspective, you assess, and is it adequate? Is it give transparency? Is there a bias, accuracy? All that stuff you analyze, and that's the way to go. I think that's what we should follow rather than waiting for the law to come.
Yes, sir. How novel our Indian architecture with respect to AI? Can you throw some difference in the light of European law?
No, there is no law in India on AI. So European also, the Europe AI law is not enforceable yet. It's not out. It's at advanced stages, the EU AI Act. But Indian, I don't understand of any law which is under construction development in India. So the answer is difficult for me to when there is law itself doesn't exist.
Yes, sir. So that's it, sir. There are no more questions.
Good. If anybody wants to ask, they can put their mic on or ask.
Yes, sir.
Feel free. I don't have any problem if you want to wait 2-3 minutes more.
Audience, if you still have any more questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. I guess that's it, sir. So
Sure. So thank you very much for having me, and hope I could at least incite those thoughts for people to dig deeper into this subject.
Thank
yes,
you very much, really, Srinivas Garu, because we've started off with a bang. I know we've spread it out in the things, but people are listening on what this PrivSec series are, but still we got good attendance. But the important thing is that we have make this recorded session available to the public. They can definitely, as a part of this series, this will be one of the collaterals and assets that they can always refer to for the fundamentals of privacy. It was very insightful, a beautiful session. In fact, one of the good ones that I've attended in recent times. Thank you so much. Even the question and answer session also, you provided excellent insights. Yeah, go over to your side.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your insights on data privacy in 2024 and the evolving role of privacy professionals. I hope the audience took the most of it. On behalf of Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, I extend a heartfelt thanks for being a part of the PrivSec Spotlight CISO and DPO series.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.